Ajit. How are you?
Good,
How are you,
good.
buddy?
How's everyone? Hello.
Very good.
Okay, so I think we are now live. Yeah. So let's start. Hello, everyone. I'm Fabrice Testa. I'm the WBF Senator for Luxembourg and Secretary General of WBF Business School. And I'm very happy to welcome you for this special invitation from Professor Paul Donnet, Rector of the WBF Business School. So this is a very special WBF virtual roundtable.
Test.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Is it okay? About the importance of business mentoring during and post COVID. So we will have today fantastic speakers that I will just introduce in a few minutes, and we will have the opportunity to ask them questions in the last 30 minutes. So just a few words about WBF. So the World Business Angels Investment Forum is an affiliated partner of the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. And WBIF interacts with business and public leaders all over the world and has today more than 500 international representatives. And WBF wants to facilitate access to finance for businesses from startup to scale up with the ultimate goal to generating more jobs and more social justice worldwide. The WBF Business School was established by WBF as a response to an increasing need for qualified investors, qualified entrepreneurs, and qualified companies in the world economy. So at WBF Business School, we provide education and training for individuals such as investors and entrepreneurs. And we have fantastic executive development programs to contribute to the business transformation of both private and public entities. So the program today, it's quite amazing. So we will have first a keynote from my friend, Professor Inderjit Singh, who is the president of WBF Research Institute. Then I will have the pleasure to moderate a panel with Pranjul Shah from Luxembourg, who is the head of University of Luxembourg Incubator. Hello, Pranjul. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, Fabrice. Nice to meet you and everybody here on the panel today.
We will have also Akash Karia, who is a best-selling author, business coach, and founder of HPX Institute. Welcome, Akash. Nice to have you here. And you are from Hong Kong. So yes, it's probably late. So thanks for being here quite late.
Thank you so much for having me, Fabrice.
And we have Sue Langley, who is an expert in emotional intelligence, neuroscience, and positive leadership. She is the CEO of the Langley Group and academic director of the Langley Group Institute. And she is even later because she is based in Australia and it's 1 EM. So thanks really for being here.
Pleasure to be here, Fabrice. Thank you.
And last but not least, the closing remarks will be by another friend, Dr. Paul Donnet, who is the rector of the WBF Business School. Hello, Paul. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Inderjit Singh, with a rare combination of experiences because he managed a multinational company. He is a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and a policymaker. And Professor Inderjit Singh is an engineer by training, and he worked at Texas Instruments for 13 years. He embarked in his entrepreneurship journey at the age of 37 by starting a semiconductor company. And the company was listed in the Singapore Stock Exchange in 2004. He started many other companies everywhere in Silicon Valley, USA, many countries in Africa, in India and Southeast Asia. So very proud to have you for this roundtable. And Professor Singh, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrice. And I want to welcome all the panelists and thank you for joining us for this very interesting webinar, mentoring. The key word here, the topic is the importance of mentoring during and post-COVID. But the key word here is not COVID, but it's really mentoring. While we are in the era that's dominated by the impact of COVID that disrupted the normal way of doing business, the aim for entrepreneurs and business owners is not just to survive, but also to look for opportunities in the new normal that is going to come. But how does one plan for survival, let alone look for opportunities in such a tough environment? The entrepreneur, as we all know, is probably very busy fighting fires to try to survive. And so how does one go about handling such a situation? How can we do this? How can we survive and also look out for opportunities? This is where mentoring comes in. While the entrepreneur may be very narrowly focused on what he or she needs to do to get by in this difficult situation, a mentor, if he's working with the startup or with a company or with the entrepreneur, can take a more detached or helicopter view of the situation that may help the entrepreneur and the company identify solutions that the entrepreneur's narrow view of things may not be able to see. So that's one value of being and having a mentor in this time. Now, second, choosing the right mentors is also very important. Each of us have a very limited number of networks or contacts that we can use, especially for many entrepreneurs who may be starting out in their journey. Now, good mentors typically have a wider base of networks and than the entrepreneur may have. And it's this wide base of network that can come in very useful to help the entrepreneurs in helping solve problems, but also to look out for opportunities to work together with them. So the mentors with a wide network actually can help multiply the network the entrepreneur may have or may not have currently. Now, let me share an example in my university, Nanyang Technological University. My unit, I'm chairman of NTUT, which is an innovation company of the university. And our role is to help professors spin off companies, their research, to create companies, and students to do their startups. Now, after many years of experience of helping facilitating the startup and spin-off of professors and students, we realized that many of them could not transition from students or from professors to become entrepreneurs or to become business people because they were very narrowly focused in what they knew and they could not survive. So we did not see many success stories. So what did we do? So in NTU, we decided to set up a group of panel members. These are mentors, panel of mentors who have industry experience, who are entrepreneurs who have been successful before. We brought them in, we kind of engaged them, and we attached them to the professors and the students. And these mentors brought a wealth of experience and knowledge and industry networks to help the spin-offs to navigate through their journey. And what did we see? The outcome after a few years was we saw a greater rate of success and less failures. And so the mentors made a huge difference that our entrepreneurs, our professors and students could not do on their own. Now, just want to share one final story. Just 2 weeks ago, a spin-off from NTU, which we spun off about almost 20 years ago, and we provided some support, finally got listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange. And this was the first unicorn that was produced from our university in Singapore. We cannot produce that many unicorns because we're a small country, but finally, we had one unicorn in the technology area. So I hope that listeners will pay attention to our group of very distinguished panelists who will bring a wealth of experience, share with you about the importance of mentorship during this period. And I hope that this will then spur you on to engage mentors to help you succeed in your journey. So I want to once again thank all the panelists for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing the wealth of experience that you're going to share. And I wish everyone a very successful event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Singh. That was a real great keynote to introduce the topic, and really thank you for that. So let's start our panel, and maybe before, let's say, starting, yes, I will maybe before you answer my question, if you can just introduce you briefly in 1 or 2 minutes before to answer the question, it would be nice. I will start with Akash, and because we are talking here about mentoring, about coaching, can you explain to the audience what a mentor or coach is, and what to look for in a coach or in a mentor? And please introduce yourself maybe in 1 minute just before. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Quick question. Can you hear me first? If you can, then just do me a quick favor. Type in yes in the chat box. I'm seeing a bunch of nodding yes heads. So my name is Akash. I'm based out of Hong Kong, and I am a speaker, which means I travel around the world, and I have the privilege of speaking to business leaders around the world and basically coach them on how to be high performers in their organization. I've done this for the past 10 years, and I've had the privilege of speaking to about 150,000 people all across the world. And in doing so, one of the reasons that I love speaking so much is because every time I go to a new organization, I learn as much from them, if not more, than they do from me. I'm also the author of 12 best-selling books. And prior to this, I was an executive at a telecommunications company. So I've had some real-world experience with actually leading high-performance teams. Now, coming to the question that Fabrice asked, what do you look for in a coach or in a mentor? And I think the fundamental insight is a good coach has to be able to ask you good questions. Now, when you think about how the human mind works in terms of questions and answers. Anytime you're learning something, what you're basically doing is you're trying to come up with an answer to a question that you have. And so if you have a relationship, you have a mentor or coach or someone else that can ask you an interesting question, it creates a different perspective, a different way of looking at the problem that you might have not seen without their input. I'll end with one final example, and I'll give you a story behind Polaroid, the cameras. Back in the day, this was one of the stories that I was reading. The reason that the Polaroid camera was invented was because the founder of Polaroid and his daughter were walking along a beach. And back then you had to, cameras were not something that was a common thing. And his daughter asked the founder of Polaroid, Daddy, what if there was a way that we could capture this moment and have it with us forever? And that question from his daughter in that case spurred a whole new insight for him that then became the foundation for the business that we know. So I think a great mentor, a great coach is someone who has the ability to ask great questions.
Okay, thank you. I guess we will have the opportunity to come back on this and maybe to see how to ask some good questions, and maybe you can give some tips. Sue, what I would like to and again, please introduce yourself just before to answering my question. Yeah, what I would like to know, and maybe what you could explain to our audience, is how do you see the impact of COVID on leaders and entrepreneurs, and why perhaps today more than ever it's important to have a mentor or a coach? Can you help us to answer that question, please?
Thank you, Fabrice. So my name is Sue. I'm based in Byron Bay in Australia. Once upon a time, like Akash, I was traveling the world doing keynotes, but not so much anymore, which I'm perfectly happy about. And I suppose that my area of expertise is in the practical application of emotional intelligence, positive psychology, and neuroscience. So what do I do every day? I train coaches, I train consultants, I train them in what goes on in the brain when they ask good questions. I give people the opportunity to learn tools and strategies to be the best version of themselves, whether they're a leader or an entrepreneur or a parent or whatever it happens to be. So I suppose what I'm seeing around the situation with COVID at the moment is actually really interesting of where people's mindsets are going, and people who are more entrepreneurial in general, I'm seeing it as an opportunity. A lot of people are actually going, this is useful. And I don't mean that in any good way. Millions of people have died, and it's horrible on the population and on families, etc. in many ways. But for many entrepreneurs, I'm actually seeing people look for the possibilities, the opportunities of doing things differently. And it's interesting, I know from my perspective, we run a diploma of positive psychology and wellbeing, and it was always 6 days face-to-face. You came, whether it was to London or to Sydney or Byron Bay or wherever, to do it. In less than 4 weeks, we transformed our diploma to completely virtual, with twice as many students as we had enrolled for the previous month. And over the last 4 months, we've had 120 students, whereas we'd normally only get that per year. So I think what I'm seeing from other entrepreneurs, they're able to pivot much more quickly than large organizations or people who are more entrenched in a more hierarchical environment. Does that mean you then need a mentor to do that? Well, possibly not if you're already set up as an entrepreneur. But to the point of Indrajit earlier, sometimes people find it hard to move into that entrepreneurial element. And that's where having a good mentor could be really useful. And I do want to pick up on Akash's comment, because I think there's a big difference between a mentor and a coach. If I'm picking a coach, I am picking somebody who can ask me really, really good questions. And what that means is a question my brain has not yet thought to ask. That's what's critical in a coach. A mentor, maybe less so. Maybe you just want to follow somebody in what they've already done. There's a difference between the two.
Okay, so yeah, so the coach actually asks great questions. The mentor is probably more a guide, and you will find the question yourself. Is it what you mean?
Well, I think with a mentor, if you look at the actual distinction, a mentor, if I'm looking for a mentor and I want to grow a global business, a mentor is somebody who's already grown a global business that I can get advice from, support from, financial, guidance, connecting me with the right people. That's one thing. A coach is somebody, I think, sometimes even more useful, who will, you're already smart. If you're going into an entrepreneurial, you're already smart. You're already thinking of new things. I know myself, sometimes I've had coaches that honestly, I think they shouldn't be in business because they're asking me every question I've already asked myself. And there's no point to that. You want somebody who is going to ask a question that your brain literally goes, great question. Because you want somebody to poke your brain in a way it is not yet fired. And again, there's some really cool research around what a good coach does from a neuroscience perspective.
Okay, I will be very interesting to have your insight about this. So we will come back later on this. So let's go back after Hong Kong and Australia. Let's go to Luxembourg with Pranjul. And Pranjul, you work with many mentors within the incubator of the Luxembourg University. So I think it will be interesting if you explain a bit the importance of mentoring in the university ecosystems. And in particular, I think you have a specific approach because you work on team mentoring in lieu of individual mentorship. So I think it would be interesting if you can explain your approach taken by the Luxembourg incubator, the incubator of the Luxembourg University.
Thanks, Fabrice. Very happy to be here. And so first of all, I'd like to introduce a little bit about what we do at the University of Luxembourg Incubator. We started out 2 years back, really meeting a demand in the ecosystem at the university, where a large number of research projects led to phenomenal number of patents and scientific output, which the government felt was not being translated or commercialized enough to eventually create a full circle of investment for the government, that the money that was going into research and in education was not somehow meeting the goals of what the government had for the country's socioeconomic development. So the incubator was then created to really support and in some senses create a safe haven within the university where students could actually practice and learn about entrepreneurship, not just to become great entrepreneurs, but even to just acquire the transversal skills or transferable skills, which are now in much more demand, especially now even more in COVID times, than the degree certificate that they would come out with. And this was the genesis of why we created the incubator. I've had now the pleasure of running it over the last 3 years, where I could say, like Sue and Akash also mentioned, and Indrajit also touched upon, is that during COVID times we've just seen a complete acceleration of students taking up and professionals and researchers taking on entrepreneurship. So last 2 months alone, we had about 17 companies, new companies incorporated. So we are growing at a tremendous rate, which is also a challenge because now we are operating online. In my background, I've done startups and supported startups in practically every space. I come from IT background, then I moved to Micron Nanosciences. My first company was in the space of in vitro diagnostics in Denmark. After that, I've been working on edtech startups, microbiome startups. I've worked and supported startups in fintech space, in AI space. Most recently, this morning, I was actually discussing joining on a board of a company in India. Just got massive round of funding yesterday to support them on a topic on how to stop balding in India, which is a major challenge now. So to answer your question specifically, I think in startup ecosystems in general, the typical focus is on startups and how do you make a startup successful. So it's a defined starting point and a defined endpoint. There's a startup with a particular problem, and then you have a goal or a milestone which is defined by a business plan. In the university ecosystems, our challenge is very different. Sometimes we have students who come with skill set, wish list, aims and dreams, but they don't know the business plan of what they should go about and how they should go about executing it. So what we need to do at the incubator is very often it's about a mix of coaching and mentoring. And we define coaches and so some of our coaches or mentors actually act as coaches. Some of our mentors act as mentors. And the difference how we see it is coaches are specialists. So basically, if you need to fix a leak in your house, a plumbing leak, you will call a plumber. But if you want to have your house beautified, you're going to call in sort of an interior decorator. So for us, mentors are more of interior decorators. They're going to show you a plethora of ideas and possibilities and expand your horizon, show you things that you might not be able to see. But coaches are the ones who are going to come and pinpoint specifically where there are actionable targets, or pinpoint where the problem lies. What we try to do specifically here for different stage of our projects is at the seed stage, we really use experts or coaches, because these are students who still do not know specifically where they can use their talent, where their ideas could fly to, and giving them shape. But when they get to the stage, when they incorporate the company, we put them into a team mentoring program, which is something that we have now partnered with MIT with. So we are an MIT sister program, and we have brought this methodology now to Luxembourg and implemented that in a European setting, which is very different, of course, than the US setting. And over the last 2 years, we have supported about 30 companies in the process. We have about 45 mentors. The good part of the team mentoring is that the mentors actually get a lot more back. If you look at the typical coaching process and a mentoring process on a one-to-one, if you're asking mentors who are not paid, they're doing it on a voluntary basis, like it is in our case. It's a time commitment that they can do it out of their free time. But if you tell them, like, look, we're going to put you in the company of distinguished gentlemen who are who's who in their own field and topic, and when they come across around the table and they are discussing with this like, let's say, a select club of mentors, they all want to be there again and again, because they learn so much more at every meeting, because it's not just about the mentor there, it's also about the company and networking opportunities that provides them. So most of the time after our meetings, we run a survey and we ask mentors, did you learn something new today? And in fact, almost 100% of the times the mentors are happy to say, yes, actually, I learned a lot today as well, because the other mentors are also helping each other actually expand and learn more and new current things.
Okay, thanks. Very interesting. And so the approach of, let's say, mentoring by team, what's the added value doing this instead of individual, let's say, mentoring?
The reason why we find this much more applicable is that if you look at the general relation of a mentee to a mentor or a mentee to a coach, we have seen in the university settings, students currently, they're so used to being in a sermon. There's a God in front of you, either it's a teacher or it's a mentor or a coach, and they are kind of imparting knowledge, and your job is just to grab it. What we do is often good coaches manage to still be in the coaching process enhance. And as Sue was also highlighting, there are so many people who should not be coached but are coaches. And to mitigate this situation, that you may put somebody who, with a limited understanding of a topic and not having a full overview of what the challenge the students are facing, might put those students on a path which they think is the best solution for them. But if you put those coaches in a room full of other coaches as well, naturally there is a kind of a balancing effect. I would not open my mouth in a room full of other experts if I'm 100% confident, first of all. So it actually creates a moderation, self-moderation effect, because just that you are in this room. But what is also important is that the students are from day one coached that your simple question is going to often lead to multiple different possible solutions. The solution set for a startup to solve a particular problem might be 10 different options, but it is the job of the student to consider all of those solutions, well research all of them, consider the pros and cons of each of them, and make the decision for themselves.
Yes, I like it. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, great. I have to say that, for example, I'm doing also the coaching in the Luxembourg program, acceleration program, Fit for Start. And we have a lot of session where we are 2 coaches, or we have only 5 startups. And most of the time, yes, with 2 for 5 companies, I think it's nice because we can exchange, and and I think sometimes we have different standpoints, etc. So I think it's nice to do like this. So I really agree. Akash, so we have seen that more than ever, we see the importance of mentoring and coaching, but not everyone is prepared to be a mentor or a coach. So I will have the pleasure to teach a new course at WBF Business School, which is about business mentoring. So to form, let's say, a qualified business mentor. But can you explain why it's important to learn how to mentor and coach, and maybe, what for you is important as a mentor or coach, in addition to just ask, let's say, great questions? What can make a good mentor or coach?
All right. So the question is, in addition to the ability to ask good question, what else makes for a good coach or a good mentor?
Yes.
When we really think about mentors and coaches, I think what we're really talking about is a relationship. We're talking about a person to a person relationship. We see a lot of research around formal relationships between mentors and mentees being set up, and those sometimes don't work as effectively as the relationships that occur naturally and organically. And it's not because there's a difference between the ones that are formalized by other people and the ones that are natural. It's not that the structuring somehow removes the effectiveness of those relationships. When we look at why unstructured organic mentorships work so well, it's because there's a foundation of a relationship already existing between 2 people. So if I have Fabrice as a friend, we like each other, and you've achieved something, and you decide to actually mentor me, because we have that good relationship, you're more likely to look after my interests. You're more likely to invest in me and spend time with me. And so I would say, leaving aside the ability to ask questions, the one thing that you need to look for in a mentor, apart from what have they achieved, do they have the credibility, is, do we have a relationship on a human-to-human connection? Do we like each other? Do we want to spend time with each other? Or do we rub each other the wrong way? And it's just making it harder for me to have a mentor who I'm constantly bashing heads with. So I'd say, at the end of the day, you're looking at a relationship, and the foundation of a good coaching or mentor is a positive, healthy relationship where you two like being in each other's company.
So, and I guess to have this relationship, the foundations are trust, mutual respect, what do you see else maybe to build this, let's say, good relationship between a mentor and a mentee, or a coach and a coachee? Can you a bit elaborate?
That's interesting. I think you've sort of hit on the most important one. If I was to say, it would be definitely trust would be number one. And trust goes two ways. Trust goes, number one, I as a mentor trust that you will take my advice under consideration and you will use it, or at the very least consider it. Because if I'm spending time with you and a mentor is giving you advice or giving you time, then I have to trust that you will take it under consideration. As a mentee, you want to trust that the mentor is providing you with appropriate information and ideas. So the trust goes both ways. I trust you will serve me the right way, but you also trust that I will do something with the information that you give me.
Yeah. I do agree. Yes. And maybe Sue, maybe you can explain a bit about how can we use as a mentor or a coach emotional, let's say, intelligence, because it's one of your specialties. So how can we leverage, let's say, emotional intelligence? Because, you know, it's a buzzword. Everyone is talking about emotional intelligence, but how do you see it in the practice of mentoring or coaching? And here, let's say, we are talking about business mentoring. So we have entrepreneurs, we have executives that maybe are facing difficulty times because of the COVID situation. So what should be the best approach, let's say? I know that it's maybe a tough question, but what will be the best approach, let's say, towards, let's say, mentees and coaches as a mentor or coach, and using, let's say, emotional intelligence?
Oh my goodness, that's a many-pronged question. But I think probably the best thing I can do is link it to what's already been said from Akash about building a relationship. When you think about what emotional intelligence is, it's simply the intelligent use of emotions. If you are being mentored, being coached, whichever relationship you go to, there's still an element on both sides of managing emotions, of being able to intelligently use your emotions. And I'll give you an example, and I'm potentially going to be a little controversial here around mentoring, is if you are an entrepreneur coming up with a new idea and you go to a mentor that's done it before, they are going to have the experience, which is wonderful. But you also need to then be able to use your emotions intelligently, because if you're just getting caught up in what they think, but your gut instinct, which is often what we call it, as in your emotional radar is telling you something else, are you able to then intelligently differentiate? And again, I'll give you an example. I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a few businesses. They've been reasonably successful. And very early on, somebody thankfully said to me, because I spent my first year going, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm starting a consulting business. I've never been in a consulting business. I'd learned in my first year that most people that start a consulting business probably came out of a big corporate and then started their consulting business, and their first client was consulting back to their original business. And I never had that. I came to Australia not knowing anybody, not having any contacts, no network, nothing. So I literally had to start from scratch. And I'd been lamenting for probably about the first year of, I don't know how this works. I don't know how people do it, etc. And somebody just happened to say to me, and I can't tell you that they were a mentor necessarily, they were just somebody I was having a coffee with, said, maybe that's a good thing. And I was like, what do you mean it's a good thing that I don't know what I'm doing? But it was about creating your own way. So if you think about how that links to emotional intelligence, I'm not saying just run off with any idea that, you know, takes your fancy. But if you have an absolute belief that what you're doing in your business, your new idea is going to work, if you've explored it, etc., you have to be careful sometimes in using your emotional intelligence that you're not then lacking confidence so much that you'll just do what anybody tells you to do, because that may have worked for them, but yours may be different. And again, this is where a coach sometimes is different, because they will ask questions to explore it with you. So if you think about what emotional intelligence is, it's the intelligent use of emotions. That means, can you perceive your own emotions? Can you notice when you're having one of those anxious moments just before you go in a business meeting to pitch your new idea to a investor? Can you then manage those emotions as most effectively as you can? Can you inspire the person opposite you to want to fund you, to want to work with you? That's all emotional intelligence. People who are high on emotional intelligence have the ability to take people on a journey, to lift people up, to focus people. All of those sorts of things is part of what emotional intelligence is. And as an entrepreneur, you will have days that will be amazing and you will be on top of the world and you'll think you can conquer everything. And you will equally have days where you are ready to give up. Emotional intelligence is critical on both of those days. So you don't go running around the world thinking you're the absolute bee's knees and annoying everybody else. And equally, so you don't give up in that moment. And I'll give you an example again on this. I was about 3 years into my business and I just had a meeting that I knew hadn't gone well. I was a 30-year-old female with meeting a 55-year-old gentleman in a very senior position. And I didn't think it had gone well. I didn't think he'd taken me seriously. And I was having one of those moments of, this is so hard. Nobody takes me seriously, you know, and thinking, that's it, I'm done. It's 3 years. Let me go back and get a job. And we'd created this little set of what we call Inspire action cards. They're just a little pack of cards, normal playing cards, but they've got images on the back. And we use them in various exercises. And I had a pack in my bag. So I pulled it out, and the idea is you pick an image of how you feel at that moment. And I picked a card and I turned it over. And the reason they're called Inspire action cards is all the red ones have inspirational quotes and all the black ones have actions. So while I was in the middle of my emotion of, this is too hard, I'm ready to give up, I can't do it anymore, I picked a card of an image of how I felt. I turned it over and the quote on the back said, most people give up just as they're about to succeed. Okay. That was what I needed in the moment. And my mentor was that card that got me through and got me back on track as far as my emotional intelligence to go, no, come on, you can do this. You're doing a good job. So I think emotional intelligence is critical in life. It's critical to relationships that Akash was just talking about, but it's absolutely critical because to the ups and downs that you are going to experience and you should experience as an entrepreneur. That's part of the fun.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you that the entrepreneurship journey is a roller coaster. So there are ups, as you say, where we are super happy, and then there are very bad moments too. So yes, I think as an entrepreneur, for me, one of the best quality is probably to be resilient. You know, you need to be very strong and resilient because it's a tough journey. For sure.
And absolutely, Fabrice. And if you think about what resilience is, it's emotional management. Resilience is emotional management. I'm having a down moment. Resilience is getting back up. Well, that is managing my emotions so I can get back on and try again. And again, I think people underestimate what emotional intelligence is in its very pure form, is perceiving, using, understanding, and managing emotions. And if you can do all those things, you will probably be able to handle those ups and downs, whether it's due to COVID or whether it's just due to life.
Okay, no, that's a great answer. Thank you, Sue, for that. Pranjul, and regarding, because in your incubator, you have entrepreneurs, you have students, do you think that they are a bit losing track today because of the COVID? And if yes, how can mentors help maybe them by maybe equipping with life skills? So can you a bit elaborate on this, please?
Yes, absolutely. I think I have to say that we are really lucky that our mentors were there and to support and help all the startups during this COVID crisis, that only one of our startups decided to shut shop. Other than that, all the other startups managed to work efficiently with their mentors to identify, and pivot to new opportunities which had opened up due to COVID. And in fact, they did such a great job that in fact, many new companies came out of their brainstorms, which we had not seen before. So we were very surprised when at the incubator's application email, we were receiving 2 new startup applications every couple of days, and we had a huge list of startups to sort through. And during COVID, we actually had to onboard new mentors because there was just so much more demand. So I think good mentors for sure help startups not just through the ups and downs that we're discussing. And I think COVID is just another down for most startups. But unlike other ups and downs, if you take any 10 given startups, any sample of 10 startups, and you ask them what were your worst challenges, you'll find that they were all different. Fortunately, in the COVID times, if you ask all the startups what was your challenge right now, it was more or less same. So in a sense that if you figure out how to navigate through COVID, most of the startups needed the same kind of support, like how to move to online, version of operating, how to work from distance, how to reach out to customers from a distance, how to still be relevant, how to still deliver value in this environment, and how to still be, close to your ecosystem and to fulfill the needs of the market, how to understand where the market is moving to with the lack of information flow. So this was a gap that the mentors very quickly started to discuss among themselves, because our mentors actually meet regularly. This is another important element for the mentors, that every 2 months all of our mentors meet and they discuss what are the challenges in the mentoring process that they are facing in their own startups. So basically, not just the 5 or 6 mentors which are on one team, all our 40 mentors meet and they discuss each and every startup, their progress, their challenges. And that helps the entire global pool of mentors to then suggest directions. And this is what exactly happened, that we had the kind of a surgery session with all the mentors for all of our startups and whatever challenges they were facing. And collectively as a group, we managed to help most of them. Now, when I'm talking about the students, to answer your second question, I think we are in a historic moment which we have never seen before, where students, if you go to any university, you see that there is an online version of a course and an on-campus version, and the fee difference is sometimes remarkable most of the times. This is the first time that students will come out of university in September, and many of them will claim they have been to Harvard or NTU or Oxford or best universities without ever stepping foot on the campus. And this is going to be a phenomenal challenge. And the problem here is that we have grown up with a view of going to the university. University is for last 1,000 years has built a brand. There is an impression beyond the sitting in the classrooms. There is much of the university now happens outside the classroom. The networking, the meeting, the challenges, the discussions. And over the last 10, 15, 20 years, much of university experience was about collaborative learning. It was team working in teams, collaborative problem solving, creativity. And a lot of that has not happened in the last months. And we see the challenges now. So a lot of students, indeed, they are very lost. They are lost in the sense they don't know what to expect. Some of them are, of course, identifying opportunities in these times. And that's the result why we're seeing a huge uptake in the number of startups that they are starting to create. Many of them come with $500,000 worth of business already set up. So we are very, very surprised, because in Luxembourg, there is a region which is very prone for hiking, and it's a nice touristic region. One of our startups went to the commune and said, look, this year we see you've lost a couple of million in tourist-oriented revenues. How about I buy refurbished containers, shipping containers, and put them in strategic locations across the commune, and I will manage that as a company. And the commune signed on of that. And now they needed just to create a company to be able to get that money and use that as a vehicle to operate. So these are some fantastic ideas our students are coming up with. But that said, in general, a lot of students are reaching out to us saying, what can we do? We have no clue. And I think this is exactly where we need to really support them and push them in acquiring skills beyond whatever curricula they are in. Because now going forward, I mean, most of them will have a degree, but a lot of them have not gotten the real interactive experience and the collaborative experience that they get by being in a university. So for the next year and from January on, we are planning a series of collaborative learning courses where students can just join from any discipline ad hocly, and the goal is that they would learn how to interact with other students, how to get some emotional intelligence actually in the process as well, because that's a key soft skill now. Learning how to communicate well, how to observe and learn fast, and most importantly, what is the most important skill in the current time is learning how to fail, because this is a big problem, because a lot of these students are going to see a lot of failures before they are set on the path to succeed, and not to take failure as something that's permanent, more of a learning experience. So learning how to fail and how to learn out of it and succeed from there on is something that is very, very important. So we are working with all the students who come to us in making sure that they go back with strong personal skills, which will help them over the next year, whichever way, they decide to move on with their career.
Okay, thank you, Pranjul.
Can I,
Look,
may
yeah, please, go ahead.
On that? Because I think there's a few interesting things that sometimes we get hooked up on the way things are done. And I want to pick up on what Pranjul said about university and being more recent, that people are going to be able to say they went to Harvard without going. I went to Harvard. I never set foot on it while I was studying. I did a couple of keynotes there afterwards. I didn't go to university when I was 18. Nobody in my family did. I went from a distance learning perspective and did my degree in my 30s. I did Middlesex University. I did my master's in neuroscience of leadership without setting foot back in England. And I think sometimes we get hooked up on the way that things have been done and the way things seem to be done. We do this with all of our stereotypes, I guess. But don't be frightened to do things differently. At 18, I was a long distance lorry driver in Europe. I was the first person and the youngest person in the world, the youngest female in the world to get my international transport manager's exam. I was the first person in the world to get a neuroscience of leadership masters. And I think sometimes we get hooked up on, I have to do it in this way. And yet, if you want to be entrepreneurial, surely the idea is to find something new and exciting. And again, if you look at what the research tells us from positive organizational scholarship, which is about positive psychology in a business setting, it's about pulling towards what's possible. It's not always about seeing there is a gap in the market and, I'm going to find those gaps and I'm going to try and fill it. It's what's unique and fabulous about me. What's unique and fabulous about this situation? And Pranjul mentioned the containers. They did that after the earthquake in Christchurch many years ago. And you still see really cool containers that have been done up as shops, etc. So I love that somebody's gone, woohoo, this is new, it's different. They haven't followed a routine coming up with that idea. They've thought, wow, this is something unique. And I do think we need to, that's the thinking we need to encourage. And I think sometimes it's too easy, especially in university settings, to follow, or again, particular hierarchical process orientated, to say, this is the way it's always been done. We've got to do it that way. And I might not succeed because I didn't go to university, or I didn't go to the right university, or I didn't do the right path. Who knows what the right path is? And that's what I think is really cool about everybody on this call. You are all unique and special. And if you can find a way to pull towards what is awesome about you, never mind what other people have done. So.
No, I love it. I fully agree. Look, I have a last question for Akash, and then we will answer the question of the audience, because we have several questions. Let me just wrap up before asking my question to Akash, because it will be also a kind of exercise. You will see, you will like it. So what we said is that, yes, mentors and coach, they ask great questions. They must help, let's say, mentees and coaches to be the best version of themselves. Entrepreneurs, they pivot, let's say, more quickly. So you have to be very flexible. We know that the entrepreneurship journey is a roller coaster. Even in the corporate world today, we know that there are ups and downs, and that it's moving very quickly. It's all based on relationship and trust. We have to use intelligently the emotions. COVID is another down, so it will stop at some point. And the last point that you mentioned, and I love it, yes, do things differently. There is, rules are rules, but I think you have to make your own rules. What I would like to ask you, Akash, is that you are a best-selling author. You have wrote many books, and one of your specialties is well-being. So can you give to the audience some tips? Because, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, executives, and maybe they have to stay at home because of the COVID, etc. Maybe they cannot travel. That's my case. I'm also like you. We are used to travel, and now we cannot travel anymore, etc. So can you give us some tips of habits maybe for well-being during or after the COVID? How to build, let's say, this well-being, let's say, habits? I think it will be, helpful for everyone who is listening today. So thank you.
Yeah, so your personal well-being is incredibly important, because if you can take care of yourself, you can take care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, then you're able to bring your best self into your business and into the world. One of the cool things that I heard recently was this: your brain is inside of your body. Your brain is inside of your body. And that means if you take care of your body, you're taking care of your brain. So it's very, very important for any leader, anyone who is basically wants to achieve anything in life, to make sure that they're taking care of the physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So how do you do that? I'm going to give you my favorite tool to do this. This is it. Let me tell you the research very, very quickly. How many of you right now would like to exercise more, eat healthier, go to the gym? Let me know with a yes in the chat. Anyone have any goals about losing weight, being a bit more active?
We can guess it's everyone,
All right, most people. So in this research, they took a group of people who wanted to lose weight, and they divided them into subgroups. The first group is the control group. This is the group that were told, you know what? You said you want to lose weight. You said you're going to go to the gym. Just go to the gym. When you come back, tell us how often you went to the gym. So there's no specific instructions. They're the control group, just to figure out how often do people go to the gym when they say they want to go to the gym. The second group is the motivation group. This group was given a lecture. They were given some information that talked about the benefits of exercise, why it's important that you should exercise. They were also given information about the consequences of not exercising. What happens if you don't exercise, right? Several months later, the researchers follow up between these two groups to ask, how often have you been working out? What percentage of the control group do you think was still working out several months later? What percent? Fabrice, take a quick guess.
I don't know.
What would you guess? Control group, 10%, 50%, 90%. What would you say?
Yeah, 10, 15% maybe.
10, 15%. Turns out it was 39%. Then we have the second group, the motivation group, right? I'm seeing a couple of 10% in the chat. We have the motivation group. This was told why it's important to exercise, what happens if you don't exercise. What percentage of this group was still working out? Exactly the same, 39%. Motivation did not make a difference. The control group, 39% were still working out. The motivation group, 39% were still working out. Why? Because motivation is temporary. Fortunately, there's a third group, and this was called the if-then group. These were told, you said you want to work out, so we want you to write down this one sentence. If it is X, then I will do Y. If it is X, I will do Y. As an example, if it is 7 p.m. and I've just finished work, then I will go to the gym for 20 minutes. If it is Monday morning and I've just woken up, I will go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, and do 5 squats. So if it is X, then I will do Y. What percentage of this group was still working out several months later? Any guesses? 39% for the control group, 39% for the motivation group.
More than
90, more than 50%.
Easily.
I'm saying 60, 90, 85, 91%. 91%
Yeah.
of the if-then group was still working out several months later. And in fact, there have been over 100 independent studies done on this called if-then planning. And they have found that it is one of the most effective ways of building new habits. So what I would advise everyone to do, whatever habit you want to create right now, is think about what is your if-then plan. If it is X, what is that trigger? Then I will do Y, the behavior. Write it down. That makes it more concrete. But that is by far one of my most favorite ways of building any habit whatsoever. I use it for productivity. I use it for well-being. I use it for emotional intelligence. If I'm feeling defensive, then I'll take a deep breath. If I'm feeling stressed, then I will remind myself to just calm down. So I use it for pretty much everything. So if then, try it out and let me know how it goes.
Fantastic. I like it. So great tip. Thanks, Akash. Look, we have a lot of questions before, let's say, the closing remarks of Professor Done. So let's start with the question of the audience. The first one is, how do you see share objective needs? So how to there are two questions, how to have the share objective. So I guess that the question is a bit about how do we match, let's say, the mentor and the mentee. I don't know who wants to answer to that, and please be short in your answer because we have a lot of questions. Thank you.
I can take that. So
Thank you.
we have a specific form on the mentor side and the mentee side. Each mentee presents which stage they are, and each mentor out of 40 have to say first they have to pick the startup, and the mentee say, yes, I would like to mentor them, and I can provide them support on this side of their business. So the mentee has already highlighted their top 3 challenges, and the mentors then address to them. But what is most important, what we have discovered is that after every mentoring session, we do a survey to check with the mentee if it was useful, to check with the mentor if they thought that the mentee got some meaningful support. And as soon as we think that this relationship is not working, what Akash was highlighting, we change the whole panel, because our panel is dynamic. That is why we have 5 mentors. As soon as, let's say, a startup is in incorporation phase, the legal mentor needs to come in. But as soon as the incorporation is done, they need somebody from sales marketing. The legal mentor moves out, a new mentor jumps in the team. So there is some part which is always there. So there is a transition, but the mentoring panel is always relevant to what the startup needs right now.
Perfect. Great. I think that question was for you, Sue. So can we say being able to do self-leadership is a necessary element before becoming a good business mentor or coach? And how do you, have you helped, let's say, future potential leaders to find their personal why? So again, if you can have a short answer, I know that it's not an easy question, but
it's a big question, and sometimes everybody's looking for their why. We talk about it as psychological well-being, your purpose, your meaning in life. What I find is really interesting is sometimes people are waiting for that bolt of lightning of, oh, this is my purpose in life. Many people travel to India to try and find it. I'm not quite sure why we think we lose it in India, but people go off there to find their purpose in life. What's really interesting, if you look at the research, is human beings make meaning anyway. We make meaning every day. You see a crack in the pavement and you don't step on it because apparently it means that, I don't know, something's going to happen. You break your mother's back or something, or you throw salt over your shoulder when something. We make meaning every single day in people's facial expressions, what people say in emails. So sometimes your personal why doesn't have to be the bolt of lightning. Sometimes your personal why is every single day. Are you doing something that contributes? Are you doing something that you feel is making a difference? And guess what? Some days you won't. Some days you'll have a bad day psychologically, but you might have a happy day. Some you might have the other way around. You might have an unhappy day, but you've absolutely delivered on making a difference. So I think sometimes, again, don't get hung up on what you think people should do. People have this like, oh my God, this amazing sense of purpose. Every single day, it's a bit like Akash said, if this, then what? If you think about your sense of meaning, sometimes it's just getting up in the morning and doing the exercises. What my why is today, that's my self-leadership. That's what I'm looking after. Sometimes that's all you can do. Other times you will absolutely have a day where you feel like you can change the world. but not every day may be that day. So maybe don't get hung up on it, but just every day try and be slightly better version of you. You'll find by the end of it, when you sit back and look at the end of a day and end of a week, it'll be like, yeah, I made a difference. That's, I think, the important thing.
I love
Great.
that. Can I add on to that? Because
Please.
building what you just said, purpose is not something that you find, it's something that you make. It's kind of like being in love. People think that love is something that you stumble into. We think of love as that romantic phase. So you get married to someone because you're in love, you found love, you love each other so much. And then 3 months later, what happens? There's no love. You don't feel that connection and spark anymore. Now, do you get divorced? No. It's because love is not something that it's found. Love is something that is created. You create love in a relationship by doing loving things for one another. You create love by buying those flowers and bringing them home to your spouse and saying, I bought this for you. That creates love. Similarly, you don't find purpose. You make purpose by doing purposeful things in your day. There's a very interesting study done on janitors. One group of janitors was asked, what do you do at work? What's your task? And they said, my task is to clean up, is just to make sure everything is hygienic. Another group was asked, why do you do what you do? And this group was more satisfied with their life. They were happier, they had better health. And this group answered the exact same question, doing the exact same job. And they said, my job is to help the recovery of the patients. One group saw it as cleaning up. Another group saw it as contributing to the well-being of the patients. And so if you're looking for your purpose, you're trying to create purpose, look for how is what I am doing serving someone else. And that someone else can be your customer, it can be society, or it can just be you. It can be serving yourself to be a better version of you every day that you go to work. So look for contribution either to yourself or something outside of yourself.
Thanks, Takesh. Another question is, what will be a good meeting frequency between a mentee and a mentor? I would say probably once per month. Do you all agree? Yeah? Or no?
So
I think it's what works for the situation.
Okay.
I don't think we should be prescribing. Yeah.
In our case, what we do is at the end of every meeting, the mentee takes upon themselves some to-dos. And when they're done with these to-dos, only then they can schedule the next meeting. So make sure that each meeting is relevant for the mentees and for the mentors. So if the mentee needs 2 months to do the task that they have taken upon themselves, it is 2 months. If they are very fast and really driven, sometimes they come back in 15 days saying, okay, I'm done, I want the next meeting. So it depends. But on average, what we are seeing is typically about 1 month, once a month.
No, I fully agree. Now, from my own experience, if you don't see each other, let's say regularly, there is something which is lost. So I think at some point you need to have anyway some, if it's really every 6 months, I'm not sure that it will be profitable, but okay.
Yes, but I'd say one more thing, and that is don't forget the fact that regardless of how often you meet, you do need to communicate with that relationship often. And that might just be a text message. It might just be, hey, remember that coffee that we had last month and you told me that one thing to do? Well, I did it and it worked out really well. So communicate, not necessarily face-to-face, but find ways to keep connected somehow.
Connection, yes.
So
I agree.
I would just add something on that. So this is exactly what we do as well. And I think I didn't really go into that detail, but out of our panel of mentors, so there might be 5 mentors, over a period of time, the mentees naturally gravitate to one particular mentor where the relationship and trust is much more than the others. And at that stage, we ask that particular mentor to take the role of the lead mentor. And this lead mentor is basically your 24/7 best friend. So the mentees are in constant WhatsApp or whichever medium they want to use, chat with the lead mentor. The lead mentor does almost a weekly check-in on how things are going, just to check the emotional health or the ups and downs when they're coming. They alert the rest of the panel as needed. But basically it's them who decides, okay, it's time to set up the next meeting. They really need us, or we should maybe wait a couple of weeks. They need some more time. but the lead mentor is basically your guardian angel. So we do make sure that there is always somebody there, that this relationship is constantly, you know, kept primed. So the love is always there.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that are a bit about the same, let's say, thematic, which is the importance to have a mentor for the success of the startup, at least initially. And yeah, so maybe can one of you, let's say, talk about this? What's your opinion about this? Is it true
I would just say that the global statistics came out last year is that 70% of startups who go through some form of mentoring support last more than 2 to 3 years. In strong mentoring programs, the success rate is up to 70% of the startups surviving more than 5 years. And I think it clearly shows that this definitely works. So for sure, if it's should go or not, for a mentoring program, I would say definitely for startups at the early stage, they should go for a mentoring program. And I think find one which really makes sense. So in our case, of course, we don't choose the mentees and mentor matchings. They happen on their own. So we just provide them the platform, and then they work together. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it answered the question. Thank you. There is another question: is after the startup phase, is it necessary to have a mentor? I would say I will answer to that question. I do think that you can have a mentor all your life, but again, I think you need to express the need of it. And like you said, let's say maybe at some point you take what you have to take, and maybe you have not to take everything. I mean, again, they are probably there to help you, to guide you, to support you, but you have not to follow, let's say, strictly what the mentor, etc. Maybe when your company is growing, maybe what is nice is to have advisors. You know, there is the nice book that I recommend to all of you to read is the $1 Trillion Coach, about Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell, let's say, he coached a lot of executives, a lot of entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley. And and during all his life, let's say, he coached people from really their beginning up to even really well established and well successful entrepreneurs. So I think probably all our life we can benefit from a business mentor or a business coach, in my opinion. Yes. So what's next questions? Yes. If a business fails, what is the better look for, a coach, a mentor? Why? Yeah, I don't know who wants to answer to this.
I think, I mean, I would kind of bridge to the question before in this. So I think if it's a good, well-run mentoring program, it is always relevant to the mentee's needs. So as I said, in our program, the panel is a dynamic panel. So a mentee, as they progress to different stages of their startups, maybe it's an up or a down, the mentoring panel will change. And this is something that the lead mentor is constant, but they look at the most imminent pressing needs of the team or the mentees, and they make sure that the panel always stays relevant. So in the similar situation, if a startup was facing severe crisis, we would bring in business transformation, like mentors who are really experts in business transformation or sales or business turnaround. And that's exactly what a good mentoring program should be able to do, is to bring the right people or the right surgeons or the doctors at the right time to make sure that the startup, even if it's going to fail, it's going to fail graciously.
Okay, so we have a last question, and then I will give the floor to Professor Donnet. Is it worth to have different mentors? Maybe because there are some mentors that are, let's say, skilled in one discipline and some in other disciplines. So what's your opinion about this?
I'll take that. So I was hoping you'd touch on that. And I think one of the simplifications that we make when we talk about mentors and coaches is we assume we just have one, that it's going to be one mentor for the rest of your life or for that particular business. If you turn to athletics as an example, there's many different coaches on that team. So when you see a boxer like Mike Tyson, he has a strength and conditioning coach. He has a boxing coach. He has a cardio coach. He has a nutrition coach. For yourself, it depends on what are the areas that you need help with. And so you're going to have different mentors and different coaches and contributing to different parts of your business and your life. So I think it's always great to have a team. It's a team effort rather than an individual mentor's effort. That way you're able to tap into people's networks, and you have 10 times as many networks because you've connected to 10 times as many people, and you have lots of different opinions. So you can see for yourself which weighs more than the other, and you can make your own decision about what you want to do. So always you need to have a wider variety of mentors in your life.
Okay, thank you. Look, thanks a lot to my panelists. I think you did a great job. Personally, I learned something, so I always like to learn something. I hope the audience is the same. Now, I will, let's say, leave the floor to Professor Paul Donnet for the closing remarks. And let me introduce properly Professor Donnet. He is the rector of the WBF Business School. He served as group CEO of Turk Telecom for a total of 8 years. During that time, he established the company's corporate venture fund. He led several IT technology company acquisitions. Then he set up a venture capital company, and he made 22 venture capital investments, half of which are pure startups. And he likes investment, particularly in renewable energy, geothermal power, biogas energy. So, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a very interesting panel, Fabrice. Thank you very much, and to the panelists and the contributions that you have made. You know, I think that just to touch slightly on the COVID situation, I mean, pre-COVID, mentoring was important. Post-COVID, maybe mentoring in some specifics probably become even more important because these companies may be facing a little bit more stress, maybe more difficulty in raising the next round of money. And hence the importance of mentoring for those who are giving mentoring and for those who are receiving, of course, is extremely important. Now, the most important thing, I think, for the mentee part first is having invested in yourself what is needed that you know that you need to do, that you're investing in yourself to strengthen some of your limited knowledge areas, that perhaps you should strengthen them through networking and so on. So the mentor can be a nice sounding board. And as previous speakers have indicated to you, your connection with that mentor, of course, is extremely important. So to the extent that, you know, startups and early stage companies are facing additional challenges because of the COVID period, perhaps the mentors also have perhaps a bit more time than they would otherwise in a situation of, if we can call it, quote unquote, like normal life, you know, whatever that means. But I think in this COVID time, people actually have more time. They're underutilized. They're wasting less time on things which in the normal life, quote unquote, perhaps takes a bit more of their time. So the ability to connect with one's mentor over, for example, an online medium is something that we're being pushed into it more than we would like to. And of course, we're now getting used to that. So therefore, I think that the relationships that, you know, entrepreneurs need to make in order to get through the challenges that they are doing in their life, of course, in this Corona period, probably is a little bit, you know, easier than the normal times, but the challenges are more. So because just to make this thing related partly to the COVID itself, since, you know, that is also one of the topics that we have. But in the end, we all know that raising money and making startups is challenging even in normal times. If you happen to be in a sector that is not affected by the COVID, then of course, you know what you're doing, just keep doing it. If you are in a sector that is affected by the COVID, and you know that your plan just needs to be stalled a little bit, control your costs as much as you can, and perhaps trail off the next funding round so you don't make your investors nervous. This can be a part of mentoring that relates to the challenges that you are expecting to face in the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months, that perhaps 6 months ago you were not thinking. And I think even the Corona period, and most people didn't think that we would have such a strong wave this winter. And now many markets are having to face that reality, and that's putting also some stress on the funding source. Perhaps, the people who are providing the funding are also becoming a bit more nervous and so on. So the money is the important part, that you need to make sure that you get the funding that you are expecting to get. And in the case that you don't get it, because of these factors that I indicated, see how you can get that help from that mentor who can perhaps give you ideas on that. I liked also what previous speakers indicated relating to the example that if you're now going to be needing more business type mentoring that understand the actual technicalities of your business can help you, for example, restructure it and so on. That of course can become quite an important part of mentoring. But in those areas, I also very strongly recommend to people to invest in themselves and increase their own knowledge base in the subjects that they are working in, and use your mentor to guide you to what those are. And that can be also a very rewarding thing that you do. And there's no shortage of online courses that you can take to increase your knowledge base and they give you a better grip on what needs to happen next. Frankly, this is really all I have to say. So Fabrice, you can come back and tell me what you'd like to do next. Thank you.
Well, I think, unless maybe if the panelists want to say a last word, or maybe, if you have a last advice, we have maybe a couple of minutes more. Yeah, otherwise, thank you all. I mean, do you want to say a last word, maybe?
I'm happy to say something, and I think it's that there are many different ways to do things, and again, don't underestimate the power of doing it differently. To Paul's point, funding is really useful. I didn't have any when I started. No funding, no nothing, still managed to start a business. I didn't have a mentor when I started. Would it have been nice? Yes, absolutely. But did I have one? No. So I think it's really useful, again, for everybody listening to think about the whole point of entrepreneurship is that you're doing things differently. So that's my message of just being careful we don't get caught up into the way things should be done around here, because maybe there's a new way. And a couple of times COVID has been mentioned as a down. Does it have to be a down? Could it be an up? Because every business has been impacted, but so many have been impacted in an amazing way. I have a client who said, I actually feel guilty because our business is thriving. Now, again, it's not to say we don't feel for the people who are struggling, but if we can find new ways of doing things, this could be an amazing opportunity to change the world for the better.
Great. Thank you very much for being so late because it's very late in Australia. So thank you, Sue. Pranjul, you are unmuted.
So I want to just carry on with what Sue said and quickly just highlight to you that if you are interested, of course, in running a well-functioned program right now in the COVID times, what we have introduced as a new way is we have designed a new app to manage the entire processes of running a well-functioned mentoring program in partnership with MIT. And we are about to pilot this program with MIT as well. So we have already adopted this application, which basically takes care of everything that you want to do in the back office for running a good mentoring program. So we have apps for mentors, we have apps for mentees, we have apps for the office side for managing the whole program. And once we have piloted with MIT, it will also be available to other programs. So if anybody is interested to know more about it, I'm happy to show you the app. But for now, I'm just going to quickly show you what the app is capable of doing.
Yes, Pranjul, if you can share the link maybe in the chat box,
will do
I
that.
think it will be interesting for the audience.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, good. And Akash, do you have a last word before we conclude this roundtable?
Fabrice, I just want to say thank you to you for doing such an awesome job with moderating. For
You're
those
welcome.
of you that don't,
my pleasure.
for those of you that don't know Fabrice, Fabrice is a very, very accomplished entrepreneur. And if it would be great to interview you sometime on your thoughts.
Thanks.
In terms of my final thoughts, I'd say this: it's looking at where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And who can help you get there? And the next question would be, apart from who can let you get there, it's are you ready for a mentor? Are you willing to take on advice? Are you coachable? Are you someone that's willing to learn? That's a question that you need to ask yourself. So where are you? Where do you want to be? Who can get you there? And are you ready to have that person on your team? Those are the 4 questions that I would consider when going into any sort of mentorship or coaching relationship.
Great. So thanks again to all of you. I think it was great and we learned a lot. Thanks, Professor Inderjit Singh. Thanks, Dr. Paul Donnet. And I wish we will meet again for a new roundtable of WBF and about some other topics. So take care, stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.